USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
So my dad was a World War II veteran in the Marine Corps. He was on Guadalcanal, and he was my introduction into the service and the Marines. I remember at a young age I used to put on his uniform, and I thought that was neat as heck. And so I always, from a young age, thought I wanted to be a Marine. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and the Marine Corps came to the high school recruiting people. And you know, the war was never mentioned too much in the recruiting detail, but they were looking for people that had auto mechanic background or some type of mechanical background. In 1966, when I was getting ready to start my 12th year of school, I had decided if my dad would sign the papers, because we'd been toying with it, that I would like to join the Marine Corps because they had offered a high school diploma if you finished your commitment to the Marines. I figured it was a chance for me to get out and see some world, because the Marines had promised a lot of different duty stations for my qualifications at that time. So I had interest, and my dad finally said that he would sign the paperwork so that I could join the Marines at 17. Took the oath downtown Cleveland, in the Federal Building actually, and the next day we were supposed to come with very little gear, and we were getting on a train and heading to Parris Island, South Carolina. We seen these guys come on the bus. The drill instructors came on and just came on pretty subtle, and the next thing you know, they just start screaming, "Get out, get out, get off, get off." And some of the men that had hats on, they stomped their hats, take their hats off their heads, stomp them in the dirt, put them back on and make them wear them. I think I was one of them. I think I had to wear a hat that was half stomped off in the dirt and put it on. So we wear Marine hats here. We don't wear these scumbag civilian hats. So, and then they had all these feet prints that when you got off the bus, you went and stood on a set of find your feet prints that fit you, and you just stood there forever waiting, and it was a pretty horrifying experience. As of this day forward, we're all green. There's no black, there's no white, we're green. I like that. That put us all on the same keel as far as any prejudice or anything that would be happening or was happening at that time. The one thing I remembered about graduation, they took us to Beaufort, South Carolina. The drill instructor said, "Now you men are men now, and and we want you to behave right, and whatever you do, don't cross the tracks, because there's prostitution and illegal stuff down there, so make sure you don't go down there. And if you do go, make sure you go to the second block, not the first block. But we don't want you going down there." And it was pretty nice to be free after all that, because there was some very intense training. Marine boot camp is not easy.
Did you go to a specialty school after that?
I did. We went to a infantry training regiment school, ITR, and that was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And they have a lot of problem there now. A lot of the people that drank the water there were sick for years, and it was kind of a hellhole getting you ready for combat. And at that point in time, they had live fire exercises where if you had to crawl on your belly, and if you sat up, you might get killed, because that stuff was whizzing right over our heads. I went with the whole troop, just like we were going to Vietnam. We got to Okinawa, Japan, and the 17-year-olds, they took us aside, and all that group of people that I was with, that I trained with and everything, they went to Vietnam. I went to Iwakuni, Japan, to air base that the Marines have where they train people for loading helicopters and weight distribution and being along the flight line. Iwakuni, Japan, which was a really good duty station for a 17-year-old. That was a beautiful place to be. I stayed there 4 months, and all at once it just came and took us to Vietnam, took me to Vietnam. They figured I knew enough about the flight time and everything, and I turned 18. So at 18, I wasn't 18 long. I was very young in Vietnam. I just turned 18. It was only just a couple hours, and the next thing you know, we're in Vietnam. Yeah, the smell and the language, and no language barrier or anything, but I was really lucky. I had ran into a gentleman who had spent that time in Vietnam, right in Da Nang. My good friend, I'm still friends with him. His name's Danny Green. Just by the grace of God, I ran into Danny, and Danny had been in Vietnam for a while, and he knew how to live there. And he got me checked in right away to all the different things that we had to check in Da Nang, and went down to where my duty station what was going to be, so that was really helpful. In order to fly helicopters in Vietnam behind the mountains, they had to have an antenna, and these antennas were set up on the top of mountains and small hills called ASRAD antennas. So that way the helicopters could drop down below the mountains and go into them valleys and still have contact. One of our missions was to make sure that the antennas were serviced. It was really dangerous because the VC wanted them antennas big time. One time they set me up, I'd never spend a night at an antenna. We'd go up there and service them and come down. Sometimes I'd fly to them. It depends on where they were at. But this antenna had been overrun the night before, and they needed people to get up and guard it the following night. Went up there to the foxhole where the men was sitting still had remains of people in them, just pieces where they'd overran the thing. They threw satchel charges in there, and just, this gentleman had got blown to smithereens, and there was just like pieces of his uniform and stuff, and there we have to use the same foxhole that he was in, same, position. It was smelling burnt, and just, it's one of them things that it never leaves you. That smell, and just seeing them pieces of his uniform there, and just knowing this guy, they totally overran him. I always thought the thing looked like a golf ball on stilts or something. So the signal came from Da Nang and hit that, and then that could send it down behind the mountains. After I'd been in the group for a while, I realized how important they were to our survival, to helicopter survival behind the mountain. That was one of our functions. The other one is we'd fly chow to remote bases and fly, sea rations and stuff. We're basically a utility platoon. If they needed anybody, something fell short, they'd always mag 18, Marine Group 18. A lot of the people that were in my unit have a lot of problems from Agent Orange, because we were around it a lot. We used the barrels that Agent Orange come in around our barracks, not realizing how lethal that stuff was, and I'm paying the price for it today for being around Agent Orange. I'm blind in one eye, and I'm a diabetic, and just have that stuff that's related to it. My first experience with it was they just put up a new antenna, and we went out there, and of course it was jungle around it. They cut down the best they could, and they'd sprayed orange around it, and we went up maybe a day or two later, and everything was just dead, big stuff. And I was like, I told them guys, I said, I just can't believe this stuff. I've sprayed gasoline, I've worked on a farm. We tried killing foliage. Foliage is really hard to kill, and I went up there and everything was dead. And I was like, whatever this stuff is, it's more powerful than anything I've ever experienced. And still, as young kids, we didn't realize what we were messing with.
Rocket attack on the U.S. Air Base at Da Nang kills 8 Americans, wounds 173, and destroys 11 aircraft.
In Da Nang, where we were at, there was rockets all the time. So there was a lot of people getting hauled out of there in stretchers, and just a lot of carnage and death. because of where we lived. Lived right on the flight line, probably one city block back from the flight line itself. At one time, a rocket had came in, and it came from, there was a village right outside of Da Nang called Dog Patch. It was both friendly and unfriendly. And they had noticed a rocket trail come from real close at Dog Patch. So the next morning we went out there, and there sat the rocket launcher that was nothing but a piece of bamboo, probably 8 inches, sliced in half, laying with an X, and just all wrapped together with reeds and stuff, and they launched it right from there. It was probably 500 or 600 feet from our perimeter where they launched that rocket from. Slid in there and launched that rocket that close. When I first got to Vietnam, we were living in a building that they called it a hardback, and basically it was just 4x8 sheets of plywood put up, and then they put a tent over it. And so we were living in hardbacks for probably the first 6 months, and I seen some bulldozers over along the flight line, and they had these big rakes on the front, and I asked the gunny sergeant who was in charge, I said, what are them dozers doing? Clearing dud rounds, stuff that had hit over there and didn't explode? He said, we're gonna build barracks. The Marines want to build barracks over there. I said, that's where all the short rounds fell, right where there's, if they were trying for the flight line and they didn't make the flight line, them rockets all fell in that area. Next thing you know, we're moving into that area. In bunkers, there was I always questioned that type of thinking. Why would they move us into harm's way that close? And that's where I got a Purple Heart, from that area right there. So this is the Purple Heart I received in Vietnam.
You received this in the field in Vietnam?
In the field in Vietnam. And my Purple Heart ribbon. Here's a picture of me in Vietnam. I have a picture here of my friend and I sitting on a bunker that took a direct hit. And I still know this gentleman. He's in Cleveland. His name is Morris Scaropa. We go and visit him. In that day, Marines use corpsmen from the Navy. So the Navy corpsman wasn't embedded with us. He was over in the Navy. They were all close right there. And that morning that the rocket hit, we didn't have any corpsmen to take care of it. We weren't really trained in triage of helping anybody. We'd get a corpsman. Well, the corpsman, he wasn't there when the rocket hit, and several of the men died from sucking chest wounds. And I never knew that you could block a sucking chest wound with anything. So, gentleman laying on the floor, you try to do CPR, blood comes out of his chest just like a fountain because we're pressing on his chest. What do we do? And often I asked about what to do about a sucking chest wound. You could put your finger in that hole. You could put cigarette paper over it, just cover the wound. And 2 men died right in front of us right there that we just watched them slowly succumb to, actually they drowned it with their own blood in their lungs. It took a long time for me to be able to even talk about this. For a long time it was all stuffed inside, and it's got to get out there, and I feel better about it. I took a look at the whole situation, and I was coming back because I went to Vietnam pretty early in my 4-year career, and I still had 2 years of service left, so and people ask about this, why would you sign up for another tour of duty? I signed up for another 6 months. And I got that here, and I think I see that date. 31st of July, 68. We got 2 weeks, 2 weeks of leave. They flew me back to the United States for signing up for 6 months and gave me 2 weeks leave. And when I came back from that, everybody thought that I was going to a duty station other than Vietnam because I didn't tell them that I had signed up. And on my second week, there was questions about what duty station I was going to, and I was still holding off, and my dad, who was a Marine, looked at my record and seen that I was going back to Vietnam. That horrified my family bad. I mean, my girlfriend, I lost my girlfriend behind it. My mom and dad were both mad. Why would you go back to Vietnam? We sat here for a year worrying about you, you know, and you'd gotten a Purple Heart and all this stuff, and you're going back. Well, at that point, I thought I knew how to live along the flight line. So I felt that if I could get another 6 months, I could save some people's lives. That's why I was going back, to save lives, just from that, from knowing how to live along there and what to look for. And so my family was, like I said, totally horrified. I lost my girlfriend. She didn't want to wait another 6 months. And actually that turned into a year because I signed up for another extension. And the reason that was is I'd become salty from being along the flight line. I thought I knew how to live in the Marine Corps, and I'd see these young guys come in and they were all shiny, short hair and everything, and along the flight line, and when you were there a while, you could kind of be more of yourself, more of a natural. Your hair could be a little bit longer, and I wasn't ready to go back and see somebody kissing butt for rank, because we didn't do that there. So that was another thing. I guess I was kind of, at that point, scared of that squared away feeling that the new Marines would be coming in. They wouldn't be. And there was hazardous duty pay. That was a nice thing. I was stacking some good money on the books for when I did get out of the Marine Corps. I had $5,000 in '68, which was a lot of money stacked on the books for when I did get out. And I was seeing here, I thought it was here, I got turned down for one more. They sent me back, and at that point I wasn't good anymore for the Marines. I'd witnessed too much where they had us living and different things like that. I'd lost rank a couple times for different instances and just things that happened, and I was kind of getting disillusioned with it at that point. I was in the city of Da Nang and kind of on the outskirts, and this gentleman had came in on a mail run, and he was running a vehicle called an Ontos. Ontos is a really fast track machine, and the traffic was backed up in Da Nang, and I remember him. He just ran the thing off-road, ran through all these rice paddies where these poor Vietnamese people, supposedly on our side, were. Water's running where it's supposed to not run. All these the little dams that they had to hold that water back in them rice paddies, he just ran it all together. And I remember this Vietnamese farmer standing there with his shovel in his hand, just shaking his shovel, just, you know, hating what this guy just done to his land. And I witnessed that a lot in Vietnam, where Americans kind of, just because we were angry for being there and just didn't respect the people for the respect that they should have had. Because we're there, we're big and we're bad, and, you know, it's us. They didn't mean a whole lot to us, especially Marines. We'd run them trucks hard and fast down them highways where somebody's riding a bicycle and a truck passed you at 50 miles an hour and think it's funny that we, you know, dusted them. Being on the flight line, I used to go to this place called Mortuary 1. That's where after there was a firefight, them bodies would be stacked, and they'd be stacked in there like cordwoods, all in green body bags stacked up, and it was just, and I'm thinking, you know, I didn't know what the end result was going to be. But I thought that all these young men losing their life, and what are we doing here, and, you know, what is the gain? I actually, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was anti-war. And I never thought I was. I've never been a warmonger, but, you know, I'm going to do what America wants. I'm an American, and I'll help America any way I can, but just that loss of life was just, for the people at home, not respecting what it was. The way we took care of things in Vietnam is you took it out. Ran it over, shot it, killed it, drug it, did whatever, you know, and now I'm here in America, and that don't work anymore. And it was a big adjustment. I had serious anger issues. So I came home, found a woman, traveled around, couldn't get settled down. Across the United States a couple times. Back to Cleveland. Got a job in Cleveland. Got married. The Marines put me out with an undesirable discharge after my service to them. And my marks were all good until the day I got blown up. After that, it went to heck. Out of 4.5s, and we worked on that discharge, and I got it back to honorable and start getting taken care of. And I was camping. So I've been out of the Marine Corps probably 10 years, 15 years. And I was watching this gentleman in a big bus, and I watched him do his thing, and the bus looked good, and it was all good. And we were emptying our holding tanks together. And I asked him, I said, man, your rig looks really good. What do you do? What kind of work do you do to afford this? He said, well, let me tell you. He said, I'm a Marine. He said, I'm getting some benefits from the Marine Corps, and my wife's a school teacher, and she just retired. He said, we're gonna go ahead and do this. He said, I see you got a veteran's hat on. I said, yeah. I said, I'm Marine. He said, oh yeah. So we shook hands with Marines. He said, are you getting any benefits? I said, no, I'm not getting any benefits. He said, well, do you have anything wrong? Yeah. I said, well, I'm an alcoholic, And he said, if you ever came to terms or grips with what's going on with your Vietnam service? I told him I'd done 2 tours. I told him I hadn't. He said, well, do me one favor. He said, go there and see them guys. He said, they got some help for you. He said, you need to go see your veteran service rep. And I did, and that changed my life. And our veteran service rep was a representative that had also he was in the Air Force, and he served in Da Nang. So he knew about the Da Nang airport, and he knew all that stuff that I knew, only he'd been doing it from a different perspective. He was over on the Air Force side. He helped me immensely. After that, he said, hey, and he said, how many veterans do you know, Eddie? I said, I know quite a few. I was working at a paper company, so I start sending them guys down there, and they start getting their diabetes medicine. They start finding out they were diabetic. They start dealing with their alcoholism. And that all came from one man, Dave Dilly. And not only that, a little bit of money helps. Back about 10 years ago, I was getting a divorce from a woman. Like Vietnam veterans, there's a lot of us had 5 wives. And word got back to where I was working at 7 o'clock in the morning. I just came to work that there were some people breaking into my house here in Coshocton, and I didn't know it, but it was the prosecutor and an appraiser going to appraise my things. I was the only key to it, and they'd gotten in with a locksmith. I went down there and caught them guys in my house and wound up beating them up, 2 of them, and I had to do 4 years in prison for that right there. While I was in prison, we started a barracks for Vietnam, not for Vietnam, a veterans barracks, and it was awesome. All these veterans that they had incarcerated could now go in the same barracks, so we could talk about it and we could share it. It was always the cleanest and the best. We got to eat first and do a lot of things. So I really felt good about that. It called Noble Incarcerated Veterans, and we really did good. Actually, I came out of it better. Gave me a chance to be with me and myself, and I'm like, if they're putting me in here, I'm going to get better out of it, and I did. I learned a lot about myself, and the community had never seen this. They had a welcome home for me. Wow. I'm getting out of prison, and they're welcoming me home. Had a big gathering and everything, and it's just one of them deals, one of life experiences. So right here, I'm a part of the Vietnam veterans of Coshocton County. I'm really hooked up with the Blue Star Mothers. I'm the commander of Disabled American Veterans. I don't know if I told you that, just because I know a lot about them. And the other thing that I do that has been very, very helpful is I serve on the Honor Guard also. And I think I'm at about 500 funerals.
So Matt, I think one of the things I do want to ask Dad about, Dad, you had called me saying the Marine Corps finally caught up with your diploma. So
Oh.
Matt, you remember that story about Dad leaving school in 11th grade and getting promised that high school diploma? So the paperwork never got completed while Dad was in the Marine Corps. And what was it, Dad? Was it 5 years ago?
Yes,
right
I
before
brought
COVID,
it. Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
Do you have it down?
Yeah, no, I brought it.
Oh, what?
Yes, hey,
So
it's-
it was at my high school, Matt. It was cool.
Hey, at Eddie's High School, Riverview. And so that school had been there when I got my diploma. It had been there 53 years. And he said they've only given 3 out in 53 years, and it was an honor for him. Nowadays, veterans here, we talk openly about the Vietnam War. At one time, we wouldn't say nothing. We're drinking a bunch of beer and going and getting in a blackout and just not caring. For years, it was like that. For years, I lived my life like that. Every night, just in a blackout, because it wouldn't go away until I could finally talk about it, like right here and now.